Chapter 6. Oleander bushes flanked the road leading up to the main gate of the Ravenel Marine Air Station. Colonel Meacham watched as an F-8 lifted off an unseen airway, cleared the tree line, thundered eastward, accelerating and rising in a clean parabola. As Bull's eyes followed the plane, he had an old feeling come over him, and he knew he wanted to climb into a jet very soon. He heard the afterburner of the jet kick off, the plane bank to the right and fade like a sliver of light into a blue sky. The feeling was a thirst born of time, of memory, of blood, an almost diabetic thirst that afflicted him whenever he passed a long period of time without flying. He had not flown in the month he had been home, and he felt this abstinence in his mouth and bones. Pulling up to the gate, Bull studied the young PFC, who stared at the unfamiliar bumper sticker on the front of the car. The dust from the trip and the dry butterfly parts made it difficult to decipher. Finally, the guard looked into the car and spied the silver leaves on Bull's collar. Gracelessly, the PFC pumped a salute. Instead of returning the salute, Bull stopped the car completely and stared with visible truculence at the guard, who held his salute as rigidly as some umpires who call strikes on batters with exaggerated formality. Bull spoke to the boy in a frozen, humorless voice. "You call that a salute, mister?" "Yes, sir." "I call that an abortion. I call that a disgrace. I call that an insult to a Marine Corps officer. I call that a court-martial offense. Now straighten that arm, get that elbow up, and don't bend your neck to the right. You salute like you have no pride, son. Now salute me again. Make it snap. That's it. All Marines should have arthritic elbows from snapping salutes. Good. That's outstanding. Now, if I ever see you give me one of those spaghetti salutes again, I'm going to have your arm amputated up to the shoulder. Carry on, Marine. Tell your buddies at the barracks that Colonel Bull Meacham has just reported in, and that he will be making his presence known soon." "Yes, sir." Bull drove straight to the operations building. Like all bases where he had worked, the buildings he was passing were bleached-out structures of white and gray, as though the architect had applied special leeches in the heart of each foundation to bleed off color should it ever appear. The architecture had a spareness and an economy of line that were pragmatic to the point of absurdity. He drove into the parking lot of the operations building. 2 Marines saluted him as they left the building. Bull returned the salute and grunted good morning. Bull walked down the long polished hall with a bouncing gait that was distinctively unmilitary. Old friends could pick him out of a dismissed battalion, so singular was his walk, so indelibly a part of him, that he could change it no more than he could change his blood type. He opened the door of the operations officer and entered a sparsely furnished anteroom where a hairless sergeant with a mechanical bearing so stiff that he seemed to be composed of metal parts looked up from the typewriter and said, "May I help you, sir?" "Where is Colonel Hedgepath, Sergeant? Colonel Meacham is here to see him." "He's indisposed at this moment, sir." "Oh, he's indisposed," Bull mocked. "I surely would hate to bother anyone who is indisposed." Then, his voice changing, he said, "I asked you where he was, Sergeant. I didn't ask for you to practice the mastery of the English language." "He's in the latrine down the hall, sir." "Is he taking a shit?" "The sergeant doesn't know, sir." "Did he take a magazine with him?" "Sir?" "Did he take a magazine with him when he went to the latrine?" "The sergeant believes he did, sir." "Then he must be taking a shit. I think I'll go make sure he wipes himself good." "Does the sergeant know," Bull said, bending down conspiratorially, "that Colonel Hedgepath never wipes himself after he takes a shit? He says that animals don't have toilet paper, and he personally thinks it's unnatural. What is your opinion of that, Sergeant?" "The sergeant has no opinion, sir." "You don't believe in toilet paper either?" "The sergeant does, sir. The sergeant certainly does." "Then that's an opinion, Sergeant. You are taking a stand for toilet paper. You are on the side of clean assholes, and I, for one, commend you on your vigorous defense of good hygiene. Now, I think I'll mosey down to check on Colonel Hedgepath." There were 2 stalls in the latrine. A pair of Cordovan shoes gleamed in the stall nearest the door. Bull entered the one next to the wall. He sat on the toilet without taking down his pants, although he made noises like undoing his belt and unfastening his zipper. He wanted the sound effects to be natural so the colonel in the next stall would suspect nothing. He bent down and looked at the shoes underneath the partition. Bull thought to himself that Virgil Hedgepath was one of the best groomed officers in the Marine Corps, even when his pants were down below his knees. The shoes were impeccably shined. The pants had a fresh crease. Finally, the man wiped himself, flushed the toilet, and stood up. Before he could pull his pants up, Bull reached under the partition and tackled the man by grabbing his pants and jerking them into his stall. Bull heard the man scream, and a splash as the man's arm sank into the toilet as he crashed down. Bull, taking advantage of the surprise, yanked the man by the ankles and pulled him into his booth, holding him upside down by the feet. Then, with considerable effort, Bull climbed atop the toilet, battling the flailing arms and legs of the desperate, upended officer, and was about to dip the colonel headfirst into the toilet when profanity filled the latrine. And for the first time, Bull realized that the man he held suspended so inelegantly was not Virgil Hedgepath. Skinny arms struck inconsequential blows at Bull's legs. On one of the arms below him, Bull glimpsed the bent wings of a corporal's chevrons. Bull opened the door to the stall, dragged the corporal out, laid him gently on the men's room floor, then crossed his arms as the corporal pulled up his pants. The corporal clenched his fists and was ready to swing at Bull's face when he noticed for the first time that his attacker held the rank of lieutenant colonel. A moment of indecision passed while the 2 men stared at each other. Bull finally spoke. "Corporal," he said seriously, "do you love the Marine Corps?" "What?" The corporal half screamed, breath and spit. "Corporal," Bull roared at the top of his voice. "Corporal, if you ever address me again without using the word sir, I'll make your life in the Corps a fucking nightmare. Now, pop to attention when I talk to you, mister." "That's better," Bull smiled at the man as the man before him drew rigid. "Now, Corporal, you are probably wondering why I attacked you like that. Am I correct?" "Yes, sir," the man answered. "Think about it, Corporal. It should be clear to you." "I don't know, sir." "What's your name, son?" "Ashley, sir." The attack was prompted by threefold considerations. First, I wanted to test your readiness in the face of a surprise attack. Do you realize, Corporal, that several Marines were killed by the Japanese while they were taking shits at Pearl Harbor? Now, that is not exactly a noble way to die, is it, Ashley? A fighting man can never relax. He must be vigilant to attack no matter where he is. Our nation's survival is dependent on the readiness of Marines all over the world. Where are you from, Ashley? Green Bay, Wisconsin. Are you a Packer fan, Ashley? Yes, sir. I hate the Packers, Ashley, and I hate Packer fans. That's the second reason I attacked you. Nothing I hate worse than taking a shit next to a Packer fan. Now, for the third reason, Ashley, and here we come to the crux of the matter. You stink up a latrine worse than anybody it's been my pleasure to sit next to. You also, and I know I'm getting a bit personal, Ashley, but I'm trying to make you a better Marine. You also only wiped your ass twice. I suggest that 2 times is insufficient. Do you realize the number of germs and the kind of germs that can breed in a human asshole, Ashley? No, sir, the corporal answered. Right now, this very moment, Ashley, germs with names you can't even pronounce are preparing to launch a devastating attack against your asshole that will render you helpless as a Marine and useless in the defense of your country. I'm going to let it go this time, Ashley, but if I ever find you neglecting that portion of your anatomy again, I'm going to have you up before a disciplinary board so fast it will make your ass swim. Now get out of here, Ashley, and if you ever attack a senior officer again, I'm going to jacket up that filthy ass of yours. But, sir, you attacked me. Bull shook his head in patient exasperation. That's why you're not going to make it, Ashley. You've obviously peaked out as a corporal. Countermanding a statement by a superior officer. Now, I want you to forget what happened in here today. Do you read me? Yes, sir. Good man, Ashley. I also want you to remember my name. It's Jones, Colonel John J. Jones. I'm only at Ravenel for the day. I fly around the country testing the readiness of troops for combat, and what just happened here is part of my duties. I want to impress upon you, Corporal, that this was strictly a confidential test of combat readiness, classified top secret. Tell no one, actually, because I may be trying this test on your direct superior. Now you are dismissed, Corporal, and good luck in your career. Be proud, Ashley, proud of yourself and proud of the Corps. When Ashley retreated from the latrine, Bull straightened his uniform, winked at the mirror, and spoke again to his reflection. You silver-tongued bastard, shame on you. Then he walked swiftly back to Colonel Hedgepath's office. The sergeant was typing a report with 2 thumb-like fingers. For your information, Sarge, Colonel Hedgepath is not in the latrine. He's in his office now, sir. If you'll have a seat, I'll see if he can receive you. Relax, Jocko. I want this to be a surprise visit. We have this affectionate way of saying hello, Bull said, putting a finger to his lips. He tiptoed to the door that led to the inner office and leaned against it heavily, listening for sounds of movement in the room. The door opened suddenly, and Bull, caught off balance, stumbled forward into the room. A hand caught him by the neck, and a foot tripped him. He fell sprawling onto a thin carpet that did little to cushion his precipitous fall to the floor. Colonel Hedgepath was on Bull's back, applying a half Nelson and laughing in victory before Bull was ever aware there was a fight. Virgil solidified his hold and said coolly, Repeat after me, Colonel. Bull Meacham has menstrual cramps. Kiss me where the skin turns pink, Bull bellowed. Virgil applied more pressure and said, Why is it, Bull, that I'm always about 5 steps ahead of you? Yeah, Bull retorted, his face pressed against the rug. What kind of pussy is it that jumps a man from behind? You should have been a Jap, Hedgepath. What kind of man is it that pulls a corporal underneath a latrine stall and assaults him with his pants down? The colonel answered in a voice remarkable for its softness. You heard that? I didn't hear a word of it, Colonel John J. Jones. You worthless son of a bitch, Bull said, then broke up laughing. The colonel released his grip and rolled over on his back, giggling like a schoolboy. Colonel Hedgepath laughed so hard that he loosened his belt and lay spread-eagled on the carpet. He did not see Bull leap at him. Before Virgil could renew his combativeness, Bull had flipped him on his stomach and bent the colonel's leg back to his buttocks, where he applied pressure to the colonel's foot. It was Bull's favorite hold in the wrestling matches that breached a 20-year friendship in the Marine Corps. Who's the best damn fighter pilot in the Marine Corps? Bull crowed. You're holding his foot, you chicken shit bastard. Bull bent the foot forward toward the spine. I'm not a harsh man, Virgil, Bull said apologetically, so I'm going to give you one more chance to answer that simple question before I stick this big old gumboat of yours into your left ear. Now, who's the best damn pilot in the Marine Corps? Colonel John J. Jones, Virgil answered, snickering. Releasing the colonel's foot from the hold, Bull stood up and waited until Virgil finished massaging his foot and also rose. They faced each other. Then Bull rushed toward Virgil and grabbed him in a violent but amicable bear hug and walked around the office with him. Bull set him down and they pretended to box each other, weaving and feinting with exaggerated aggressiveness, cuffing each other on the head and punching each other on the shoulders. Welcome aboard, Bull, Virgil said at last. Just tell me one thing, sports fans. How'd you know I was coming out here today? I heard the movers were moving you into that big house in Ravenel today, and I knew that Lillian would figure out a way to get you out of the house. How's Paige? Fine. She's looking forward to seeing Lillian and the kids. Hey, Burge, how do you like flying this large mahogany desk? Do you get much flight time in? I fly the LMD a hell of a lot more than I do an F-8, but I like it, to tell you the truth. I'm a little different from you in that respect. I don't get a hard-on every time I get into a cockpit. Hey, you're looking good, Bull. It looks like that Meg Cruz agreed with you. A lot of good flying. After going off that carrier for a year, I figure I could land on a matchbox in case of an emergency. I guess I ought to congratulate you on getting a squadron. I know that's a dream come true. You said it, sports fans. Of course you know what's worrying me, Virgil. Barney. Please be so kind as to inform me what son of a bitch in the Pentagon put me in Barney's group, and then tell me why Barney agreed to take me. Virgil Hedgepath walked around his desk and sat down. With this wordless gesture, Bull thought Virgil was suddenly a full colonel again. Here's the way I understand it, Bull. The squadron's had trouble. They used to be one of the best, as you know, but the past 2 COs have let morale slip. The guy there now, Bill Curry, had family problems, and it wasn't really his fault, but the guy before him, Bear Woods, Jesus, he was bad. You add up all his good qualities, and you still come up with absolutely nothing. Now, Barney's got a good chance for a star, but he's smart enough to know that if he's going to make general, he's going to have to shape up 367. It's that simple. He hates my guts, Virgil. At least he has one saving grace. I thought he was a complete asshole. No kidding, Virg. Do you think he'll leave me alone to do my job? Affirmative. He knows you do good, so... He wants you to do good, so he'll look good. Barney's no fool, and he knows you can handle men. Even though Barney doesn't like you, he's smart enough to know that you're just what the doctor ordered. There are some crackerjack pilots in 367, and they just need leadership. Barney and I were in World War II together, and that's when the bad blood began. I've heard rumors. I need a good fitness report out of Barney. You heard about my getting passed over, Verge. Somebody fouled up, Bull, that's all. They obviously think they made a mistake, or they wouldn't be giving you a squadron. Just keep your nose clean and don't go terrorizing corporals in the latrine. You're coming up for a star soon, aren't you? Yeah. You're a cinch. They love promoting scumbags like you. No, that's not true. They rarely promote anyone with my erudition or aristocracy and style. Shit, you and Varney were cut from the same afterbirth. You like literature and art, while Varney sits on his duff yapping about wine. There's nothing inherently wrong with liking wine, Bull. Let me tell you something, Verge. The world is divided up into 2 parts, beer drinkers and wine sippers. In other words, the world is divided into beer drinkers and assholes. Now, I don't mind you putting on a few airs, 'cause we go back a long way, and you've always sort of been limp-wristed, but that Varney, do you know that guy is starting to have an English accent? And the nearest he was ever stationed to England was Arlington, Virginia. Barney's not bad, Bull, and you've got no choice. You have to get along with him. He outranks you. Bull stood up and began pacing the room and hitting his open palm with his left fist. That's what I find hard to believe. Here I am, one of the best fucking leaders in the Marine Corps. One of the best, Virg, and you know it. You could give me a platoon of Marines and I can make Harlem safe for white people in 3 days. Give me a squadron and I could turn Havana into a parking lot in a few hours. I'm good, and I know I'm good, and here I am a damn light colonel while you and Barney are bird colonels. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't be a bird, Verge, but you know what I'm saying. I think you've had trouble in the Corps, Bull, because you are just too modest about your abilities. You lack self-confidence and motivation. If you weren't such a quiet, timid guy, Bull, I think you would do well when the promotion boards meet. Virgil Hedgepath threw his head back and laughed. He was thinking that he and Bull Meacham were as different as 2 men could be, yet there was no one in the Corps that Virgil Hedgepath loved more. The love was based on solid ground, for Virgil believed it was a very easy thing to love a man who had saved your life. They also had complementary personalities. Bull ruled the men under his command by his physical size and the power of his voice. Bull never understood how Virgil accomplished the same results. He could not fathom the mystery that Virgil, speaking quietly but firmly, could inspire a quality of fear that men who yelled could never approach. Beneath Virgil's placid surface was a terrible ice. With Bull, volume was the thing, but Virgil could achieve the same results by letting the interior ice harden his eyes or freeze the edges of his voice. Bull, pacing in front of Virgil's desk, brought a restlessness and a fever to command, a yeoman's rigidity, and a genius for inspiration, whereas Virgil had the natural instincts of a general. When both were second lieutenants, Bull had the makings of a good drill instructor, while Virgil had the stuff to command many divisions of Marines. As he watched his best friend pace, Virgil thought to himself that Bull still was the best yet he had ever met. You're right about one thing, Virg. I've got to get Varney on my side. I got to kiss his ass a little bit or whatever it takes, 'cause I need a good fitness report out of him. You're both professionals, Bull. Remember that. The only advice I'll give you is to play it low-key around Varney. You have one problem with him, as I see it from here. Have you ever read St. Crispin's Day speech by Shakespeare, Bull? It's in Henry V. Oh, yes, indeed. Of course, Virgil. I think I read that the other night after I had finished translating Homer from the original Greek. Shit, no, I ain't ever read Willie except for one J. Caesar when I was a sophomore in high school. Well, you ought to look at that speech. Ask Marianne or Ben. I read it to them one time. One of your problems, Bull, is that your whole life is one long Crispin's Day speech. You never let up. There's never any peaks and valleys for you, only peaks, and they're always Himalayan or Alpine. Varney is a measured man. That does not mean he is a bad Marine. He's thorough, cautious, and extremely capable. Granted, he is also full of shit, but you are going to have to find a way to fit into his style of command. He's like the president of a civilian corporation, not the old type Marine aviator who would drink all night, puke all morning, and fly all afternoon. You'll have to adapt. You're right, Virg. Maybe I'll even start drinking a little vino. I'll drop by a liquor store and take him a little Manischewitz as a bribe. You know, start out on the right foot. That's not a bribe, Bull. That's cruel and unusual punishment. No, don't take any wine. You think I should just drop below the desk and give him a real low-key blowjob? Bull grinned. Damn, Virgil said quietly. Changing you, Bull, is not even in the sphere of possibility. Let's get together for a drink after you see Varney. How about the O Club at 1700? It's good to see you, Virg. Welcome aboard, Bull. Bull Meacham strode into Colonel Varney's office, snapped to attention when he stood directly in front of the colonel's desk, clicked his heels cleanly, and waited for Joe Varney to welcome him into his air group. Instead of looking up, Varney perused some papers on his desk as though some imminent life or death decision was upon him, and he could not spare a single moment's intrusion on his time. Bull stood at attention a full 30 seconds before Colonel Varney even looked up. When he did, he grunted at Bull that he would be with him in a moment. Another 60 seconds passed, and Varney still studied the papers with unhurried concentration. The little pimp, Colonel Meacham thought. You'd think he was getting ready to sign the fucking Declaration of Independence. What are you thinking, Colonel? Varney asked suddenly, looking up at the man who stood before him. Varney had narrow, undemonstrative eyes, gray eyes, as though they were issued by the Marine Corps. Nothing, sir, Bull answered. Yes, you are, Wilbur, Varney said, using a given name known by very few Marines. You are thinking, why doesn't that little son of a bitch quit reading those damn papers and welcome me aboard this base? Isn't that what you were thinking? Yes, sir, Colonel Meacham answered. That's exactly what I was thinking, sir. Don't get smart with me, Wilbur. You can't afford to. Have a seat. I want to have a long talk with you. As Bull sat down, he spotted a picture on the wall behind Varney's desk of a squadron lined up in 2 rows in front of a Corsair. In the back row, he and Joe Varney stood beside each other, their arms draped around each other's shoulders. In the photograph, they both wore sunglasses and neither of them smiled. Fighter pilots rarely smiled in group pictures. Wilbur, Varney said, emphasizing the name that Bull despised being called. You and I entered the Marine Corps at about the same time. We have been stationed together on 2 previous occasions, and we have had bad blood between us on 2 previous occasions. Is that not correct? Affirmative, sir, Bull agreed, aware of a stickiness under his arms and behind his knees. We have had professional and personal difficulties that have made it almost impossible for us to meet and talk civilly under any circumstances. Therefore, we are faced with a grave problem. Since you are about to assume command of a squadron under my jurisdiction, and since I am determined to be the finest group commander in the Marine Corps, it is essential that we forget the past and carry on as though there were nothing between us. Do you agree, Wilbur? Yes, sir. Well, it's very hard for me to forget some things. I personally find you a bit nauseating, so I want to tell you why I agreed to let you take over the command of 367. There are other pilots that I think can do a far superior job, but none of them were available. So I agreed to take you because you were the best of the dregs. You are being assigned to this particular squadron because the present commander of the squadron is a poor leader, a mediocre pilot, an inept administrator, an alcoholic, and a disgrace to the Marine Corps. I say this confidentially, of course, Wilbur. Now, in your case, you are very close to being an alcoholic. You are a disgrace to the Marine Corps, but you are a fair leader and a crackerjack pilot. I've always admired the way you handled an airplane. Thank you, sir. I didn't ask for your thanks, Wilbur. You just sit there and listen, Colonel Varney snapped. Things are beginning to happen in this world that make it necessary, Wilbur, for you to shape the squadron up pronto. Cuba is hot, very hot, as you know, and if something happens there, we will be right in the middle of it. So I want you to shape the squadron up, Colonel. I want you to walk into that squadron and give those pilots one of your Cro-Magnon, Guadalcanal pep talks. That is the problem of young minds. You have inherited a serious morale problem, Wilbur, and even though I need you to improve that squadron, I'm hoping you can't do it. I'm going to be watching over you night and day, praying that you make mistakes so I can have your ass in the palm of my hand and end your career with a poor fitness report. Here, Colonel Varney pushed himself away from his desk and eyeballed Bull Meacham, who stared at him with cold blue eyes that registered nothing. He studied the silver leaves that shone dully on Bull's hard shoulders. Joe Varney saw clearly that the body before him proclaimed an easy confidence and that Bull still retained the violent frame of his youth. Bull was thicker on the waist and buttocks, but it seemed to have increased the formidability instead of diminishing it. But Varney also perceived something else. The silver eagles on his collar rendered all the muscles of all the light colonels in the Marine Corps impotent. As Colonel Varney studied him contemptuously, Bull caught secret glimpses of the man he would serve under for the next year. He hadn't changed much, Bull thought. The same bantam rooster and the same adder eyes. Yet he had to admit that Joe Varney was an impressive-looking Marine. His short, powerful body took to a uniform well. Varney used his head and nose when he spoke, slashing the air with his sharp, aquiline face as though it were an axe chopping at some invisible woodpile just below his eyes. But it was not his appearance that grated against Bull Meacham's sensibilities. Rather, it was his aristocratic posturing, the clipped, slightly British pronunciation of words, the carefully manicured nails, the bloodless smile, the natural condescension, the refined air of the aristocrat. To Bull, it was as if Varney were an exiled prince slumming it among the foot soldiers of the world. Varney is a damn snob, and he always will be, Bull thought. They would work together under siege, enemies bound by treaties and a professional ethic. Another thing, Wilbur, and I know I don't have to say this, but I really want to. Lieutenant colonels do not hit colonels without being court-martialed, nor do light colonels frown at colonels, or talk back to colonels, or even think bad thoughts about colonels. To put this parlance directly on your level, light colonels ain't shit, especially when they've been passed over once by the promotion board. Varney said this smiling, but he was driving in nails now, attacking deep and hard, sensing that the man in front of him could not even blink an eye in rebuttal. But lieutenants sometimes hit other lieutenants. Is that affirmative, Wilbur? Varney asked. Colonel Meacham did not answer. I asked you a question, Wilbur. Lieutenants sometimes hit other lieutenants. Isn't that right? Answer me, that's an order. Yes, sir. Will that be all, sir? No, that's not all. I don't want anyone on this base to hear about our previous run-ins, Wilbur. That's between you and me. I don't ever want to hear any rumors about it, or so help me God, I'll run you straight out of the Corps. He paused, then looked closely at the hands of the man who sat before him and said, Clean your fingernails, Colonel. They look like they belong to an enlisted man. That's all. Colonel Meacham rose and turned to leave. Varney halted him before he reached the door. Incidentally, Wilbur, he grinned, welcome aboard. It was the angle of the light or something in the way the face spread out with the smile, but Bull caught a glimpse of a crooked nose. He had forgotten that the nose was awry because he had once broken it.